you did a piece in the Hub that made me go, huh, what's happening here?
With
And
Diddy.
yeah, on Diddy. Now
Yeah.
I've not talked much about it because my ministry is not pop culture, just having these conversations. But you did a take on it, and the headline is Diddy is an alleged serial rapist, but the focus is on the gayness of his victims. And you did
Allegedly.
a allegedly. Well, no, the focus is on who's gay and who's not. I mean, it's all of
No,
that
I'm saying that
details.
the serial rapist part, you
You,
allegedly.
I said Diddy is an
No,
alleged
no, no, no,
serial
no. I was
rapist.
reiterating it.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Thank you for protecting yourself as well, and me. But yeah, I was reading a piece and I was like, oh, you went somewhere with this, and you hit at the crux of something, and I wanted to bring it to the audience that this discomfort, and I see it like when I have certain people on the show and I post certain videos, and I was getting multiple comments. Oh, he said his husband. I'm out. I said, but so you're not gonna listen to the video because the man in the video has a husband, even
Mhm.
though he's giving you your whole life. He might be able to save your life, but you don't
Mhm.
want to get this goodness because he has a husband. This is wild. Okay. Oh, you're supposed to be a Christian. Why are you letting these gay people on your platform? I'm like, wow, what kind of Jesus? So it's wild to me, this focus, but I think it goes back to that Russell Sierra thing. People are telling on themselves. I think your discomfort with the way somebody else is living their life
Mhm.
to the point where it manifests into like this visceral hatred. Thou doth protest too much.
Well, it's interesting too, because if fornication in itself is a sin, right? Like, if this sex is a sin and that sex is a sin, why are you okay with this sin and not that sin? You see what I'm saying?
866-801-8255. Kyla Jenee is here. Kyla Jenee Lacey. You can follow her at Kyla_Lacey. What do you think is at the crux of this? Because what you laid out was very disturbing. First of all, thank you for going through all of the court court documents because I was like, I'm
It was
not reading
juicy. It
this.
was
So
juicy.
it was so what compelled you to read all of this, Kyla, and what did
Oh,
you walk away
because
understanding?
I was seeing things on Twitter that people were saying, and I was just like, and so I said, well, I'm gonna, like I read half of it and I still read like 75 pages. So I was like, well, I'm gonna see what they're saying. And it was interesting. That lawsuit was kind of like almost written like a tabloid a little bit, which I thought was
Which lawsuit is
different.
this? The one that
The
Cassie?
most recent one. Not no, the Cassie one was really kind of very um because I read a lot of both the Cassie one and the latest one. And the Cassie one was definitely more matter of fact, and this one was a little more like salacious. But I still thought it was interesting because a lot of people were taking the gayness as if that was the crime, right? Like that was, it didn't matter if he victimized women, children, but he victimized women, children, and men. And so that was the issue was the victimization of the man almost, as if it was like I'm turning these people gay. And I just thought that that was a even in the actual documentation, the court documentation, that was gay, like homosexual sex was listed amongst the list of infractions that Diddy had committed. And I just thought that was like, I think that's not really what we should be doing. I don't think that's how we should see it.
The defense of him, is interesting. There's a lot of people defending him. The way a lot of people defended Bill Cosby, the way a lot of people are still defending R.
R.
Kelly.
Kelly. Mm-hmm.
What does it say about us that we have a culture? Because it's us. This is an in-house conversation, right? This is an inside the community conversation. I don't know. We could talk about Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein. That's outside, but we got opinions about that. But in-house, there's a weird defense. It's almost as if folk are defending themselves, even if they may not, participate in this
Right.
activity.
Right.
I don't
I,
understand that.
I think that's actually really valid, right? Like I think that the line between sexual assault is so is not as black and white as people like to think it is, right? Like it's not this woman walking down the street and this man grabbing her. It's way more personal. It's way more one-on-one, you're more likely to be assaulted by somebody you know. And so I think because some people would have to evaluate how they've interacted with others in the past and currently, I think people don't want to necessarily say that that is assault. And then I think too, a lot of times we see ourselves, it's the same thing as like when you see poor people arguing for billionaires, because you see yourself in that person, no matter how far you are away, removed from their type of lifestyle or whatever they, the type of power they have. You want that power, you want that money, you want something that they have, and you emulate that. And so I think that that's part of the thing, is that people look up to Diddy. Diddy is rich, Diddy is charismatic, Diddy has women, Diddy has yacht parties, and he has a lifestyle that he's really sold to people, right? Because it's not like he's a super talented individual on his own. Not saying, production is production, but I'm saying he's sold people his lifestyle, and he's really marketed himself. And that's why it's really hard for people to separate his actions from how they feel about him, and, what they, I mean, he's been in the cultural zeitgeist for the last 30 years. Like, he's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
somebody who is just on the scene doing these things. Like, you know,
yeah. I mean, look, he came back with Young
yeah.
Miami. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was another reinvent. I was like, what's happening? This
Mm-hmm.
man, 866-801-8255. And again, this is not a conversation necessarily about Diddy as much as it is about our unwillingness to hold people accountable, right? Of course, people are innocent until proven guilty. However, you know, as someone that went through the court cases you have, Kyla Jenee Lacey is here, and somebody who's lived through the Diddy era as I have. I covered him. I was pretty much the resident writer for the New York Daily News for all Bad Boys. So from Total to, I did a whole piece on Daddy's House. Like I was there for Faith. I was like, I've
Mm-hmm.
been in those rooms, not physically. I covered the court case when he allegedly had a gun and shot somebody in the face. I actually had a front page piece of the Daily News that said Puffy had a gun. That was my
Yeah.
piece. I sat with the woman who got shot in the face. So, we've been dancing. I was in court when
Mm-hmm.
rode the elevator with Johnny Cochran and Ben Braffman and Puffy. I was in
Mm-hmm.
the elevator with just us going to his court case. Spent some time hanging out with the advisors for Shine. Like, I covered that case. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I've seen him at all of these phases, and he continues to rise. And
I think
so
two. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I think two things is interesting about Diddy. One, like, Diddy has always kind of shown himself. I remember this had to have been over 20 years ago when the Godzilla movie came out, and he did the thing, and I was it Robert Plant, but he'd taken a sampled a song, and I remember the musician was really irritated by him sampling the song, because he was just like, get your own music, like, that's all you do. And then, obviously we know that with the I'll Be Missing You, and how he just was like, oh, I'm going to take that. And Sting was like, no, you're not. And so, all of his artists have, long complained about how he, has taken advantage of them. So if you are willing to take advantage over here, what's stopping you from taking advantage over there? And he's always shown that in who he is. And then also, I think people have a natural attachment to things that have nostalgia, right? Like, music has always been the soundtrack of people's memories. And so I think that's why it's also difficult for people to separate good music, because they have good memories associated with, and not realizing that it's not always a good person, who's formulated that. I think something that makes you feel good, it's hard for people to say that that source isn't a good source.
Right, right. And we should be able to do that. 866-801-8255. Kyla Jenee is here. Kyla Jenee Lacey, poet extraordinaire as well. Uh, as you were talking, I was thinking about the similarities between A. Diddy, Harvey Weinstein before he so many people came forward. Like literally he ran Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
He ran Hollywood, and people knew.
Oh,
And
sure. Yeah.
there were whispers and some people talking. Some people got whitelisted. Other people, went along. got their careers jump started, and
Hmm.
now it is the bandwagon, right? And I'm seeing the same thing happen with Puffy. It seems like every week there's a new
I
story
agree.
emerging. But where were y'all 20 years ago in Moss?
Well, one of the things in the lawsuit I thought was interesting was that he was saying that Diddy had promised him like a $20 million mansion, Grammy of the, album producer of the year, whatever, Grammy he had promised him, and then $250,000. And Diddy only wanted to give him $20,000. And so it's interesting that he was willing, and not saying that he isn't a victim at all, but because nuance is a thing. It was interesting how he was willing to go along with the evil in order to get what he wanted. And then, not saying it wasn't evil, because it was, but then it was, now I'm going to report it when I don't get what I was promised out of the deal.
So are you saying, and it's uh
And I don't think that's
hmm,
the situation with Cassie at all. I don't think that's the situation with Cassie. But I think in this situation, just how it was written, well,
right.
I was promised this and I only received this. It just is kind of like, well, are you upset about all the things that happened? Or are you upset that you had
That
to
you didn't get your
experience
money.
those things
Right.
and didn't get your money? Which,
Would you would you have been okay with being
mm-hmm,
molested and raped or whatever
mm-hmm,
if you got the money?
mm-hmm.
And what does that say about your value of yourself? Because again, it still goes back to that. Some of us are conditioned, maybe even our DNA, to
Mm-hmm.
not have value, not have enough value in ourselves to, you know, like that should never be okay. My
Yeah,
my
as I
my
definitely still think he's a victim for sure, but I think it's a weird thing to be okay with those things, as long as you're receiving some sort of benefit. But I think, I mean, that's essentially what a power structure is anyway. It's, you're okay with this because I have power and I can give you something from it. And I guess,
mm,
nobody should be shocked that Diddy didn't come through on the contract. I mean, that's kind of his MO anyway,
it's very
allegedly.
Trumpian. It's very Trumpian, allegedly. 866-801-8255. I'll reiterate the alleged.